Hey y'all, and welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about properties of operations. You might recognize the word properties from science. Properties are things that describe. So for example, a property of this shirt is that it's blue. Some other properties or things that describe about this shirt are that it has a collar, it has some buttons, it has my name written on it. Those are all things that are properties of this shirt. But in math, we're not talking about shirts, we're talking about operations. Operations are all things we've already been doing in math. It's just a fancy word for things like adding, subtracting, multiplying, and we might see that written like this, or written like this, like a star, or dividing. Those are all the operations we have. So in math, today we're talking about properties or special skills of these operations. Not all of these operations have the same skills, but they all have something that makes them special. Let's get a little bit more specific about some of those properties. Let's talk first about the commutative property. The commutative property, we might see the word commute up here. And if you're familiar with driving to and from your home to work or from your home to school, that's your commute. It's moving from one place to another. You might hear your parents complaining about a long commute if they live a long way away from wherever they work. Our commutative property is the moving property. It's the property that lets us move around some numbers and still get the same answer. How can that be? Well, let's see an example. If I said 2 plus 3, because addition, adding, has the commutative property or the commutative skill, it can move those numbers around, which would still get the same answer. Let's test it out. Here, you can see that I moved those numbers around. I changed what order they're in. And in this case, I can say 2 plus 3 is 5. 3 plus 2 is 5. Because they're equal to each other, the order that I had them in didn't matter because it has the commutative property. I'm able to move them around. That's the commutative property. Our next one is the associative property. You might see up here the word associate. To associate, the people you associate with are the people that you hang out with. It's like your group. So I'm going to write the word group up here. And I'm going to put in some symbols. Those symbols are called parentheses. In math, this is how we say, like, this is a group of friends. They like to go together first. They like to be next to each other. They don't want to hang out with anybody else until they're done hanging out with each other. These are our parentheses. The associative property says that we can group things together, and as long as whatever operation we're doing has the associative property, it doesn't matter how we group them. We can group them however we want. Let's see an example. I've got 1 plus 2 plus 8. Now there are a couple ways I could group this together. One way would be to say the 1 and the 2, those guys are friends. They want to go together first. Another way I could do it is I could say 1 plus 2 plus 8. Maybe the 2 actually isn't friends with the 1, it's actually friends with the 8, and I'm going to group those guys together. I'm going to use the parentheses to group it together. The associative property says that if it's addition, I can group them however I like, and I should still get the same answer out. Let's check it out. The associative property says these should be equal. If these ones are grouped together, that means they should happen first. So I'm going to say 1 plus 2 is 3. Plus, left over, I have this person who's not in the group, 8, and I'm going to add that together. 3 plus 8 gives me 11. Let's look over at our other option. What if 2 is really friends with 8? 2 plus 8 gives us 10. 10 plus 1 gives us 11. Looks like I got the same answer, even though they started hanging out with different people. That's the associative property. It lets us group things together. Our next property is called the distributive property. If you've ever been in a classroom and distributed or handed out all of the materials that you might need for a lesson, To distribute means to spread out or to hand out. So I'm going to use the word spread. Now, the distributive property I think is the hardest one, and there are some extra videos that you can find to help us learn about the distributive property. I'll be going over them in some other videos. But the main idea of the distributive property is that we can spread out our work. Instead of doing it all at once, we can spread it out. We can be a little bit lazy, and we can spread it out. So instead of doing, for example, 5 times 32, I'm going to use 2 different colors here to just show you what's happening. I can spread this 5 out. I can spread it out onto the 3, or really a 30, to say 5 times 30. Then take a break, and then I can come back and I can do the 5 times the 2. So now I've got also, or and, an extra 5 times 2. That's the distributive property. All I did is I took this 32 and I spread it apart to give me 30 and 2. The identity property, your identity is who you are. So for example, if I'm saying you are Bob or you are Jill, that is your identity. The identity is who you are. So I'm going to write in the words who you are. Who you are. And this one is the simplest one. It just says, if I say I've got one Bob, then I've got Bob. Or if I've got Jill one time, I've got Jill. The same thing happens with numbers. If I've got 5 one time, I've still got 5. If I have 20 one time, I still have 20. That's the identity problem. The zero property works the same way, but only for addition. If I have Bob and I add nothing more to Bob, it's still Bob. If I have Jill and I add nothing more to Jill, it's still Jill. If I have 5 and I add nothing more to 5, it's still 5. If I have 20 and I add nothing more to 20, it's still 20. That's the zero property. Now, maybe you didn't get all 4 of these properties down perfectly. Don't worry, we have extra videos that you can look at. For now, all I want you to know is that properties are things that describe, and each of these operations have some special kinds of properties. Thank you, and I hope to see you again soon.